Hello and welcome to another episode of Depression and Anxiety Secrets. I'm so glad that you're here and that you've been able to come with me on this journey of discovery. As you've watched the previous episodes, you may have been surprised about just how much our physiology impacts our mental health. You've seen that while our thought life is extremely important for our mental wellness, our physical health is just as important to support a healthy mind. In this episode, we'll be digging a little deeper into some of these concepts. You'll hear from an amazing woman who reversed her own dementia and a young man who lifted his depression and bipolar by removing certain triggers from their diet. You'll learn more about the gut and why it's important and how to improve it. We'll be giving you the exact protocols to lower inflammation and restore your gut, including a parasite removal protocol. Finally, we'll be looking at macular degeneration and ADHD and how they fit into the big picture. If you've enjoyed this, if this has been an inspiration, now is the time to take action as we have come now to a close of the series. We're closing down our special offer. So certainly just take a moment today to click the link below and support our mission so you can help us keep going and getting this life-saving message into the world. And you can own either the silver, the gold, or the platinum package to help support your needs, not only to be able to rewatch the series, but get the 55 full-length interviews and the 55 key takeaways from the experts so you can learn, re-ingest the information, go deeper in areas that you didn't get to learn about or understand in the series because they're reserved inside of the silver, gold, and platinum packages. And also to join us on the live question and answers so you can ask your questions and go through that amazing journey and process with us. So we look forward to seeing you in this amazing program. Just click the link below to support our mission and get started on this amazing journey. I just want to take a moment to share something really important with you, something that's important to me, which is part of my mission to end suffering in the world. My mission is to put an end to depression, anxiety, and other mental illness and neurodegenerative disease, but it's also to end suffering for those that are suffering depression, anxiety due to challenges that they're facing in their life, like not having enough food, water, or being sold into sex slavery, and these dramatic challenges that are happening for all kinds of people all around the world. Millions upon millions of people are suffering greatly today. And I've made it part of my mission, and I hope you've made it part of yours, to be a support and to give back to causes that make a difference and create meaning in people's lives. So I just want to show you a quick clip here from a recent trip that I took to Kenya. I visit Kenya every year and visit certain areas that are most drought affected and affected so much by starvation and hunger. And we go in and bring supplies to these people, and the majority of our funding actually comes from people that support our mission and also people that choose to donate directly to the cause. But this is something that I want to share with you so you can get a feel for some of the amazing things that we can do when we put our minds to reaching out and touching people's lives. So I hope you feel the inspiration here and enjoy this, and also just know that with the support that we get, you'll also be supporting this challenge as part of the proceeds go to help support these wonderful missions, as these people need our support and often need so many things that they totally don't have any access to. So we're bringing them these things, and it's all through the support of people like yourself. So thank you so much. Check this out. Tell us what it feels like.
To starve is very painful. It leads to wasting of the body the way it is. It is just like waiting for death.
Oh, okay. her body was not able to handle having this child and being able to breastfeed, and there was not enough food for the both of them. This child is alive, but the mother is dead, and this child is severely malnourished. This baby is 4 months old, but these legs are so skinny, tiny little legs. Hey, Maria, he's... Hey. What does it feel like to go without food?
The body becomes weak. She cannot sleep. She cannot concentrate. She becomes very weak. And she feels burning sensation inside her stomach.
What did she say? What did she say?
They are not sick. It is only starvation. Okay, it is okay.
I'm really excited right now. They've received HMB, and this is a community that really needed it. And so, like the team, we're all excited because this community, this family of people are happy for the future that they have with these tools. And so, look at the smiles on their faces. People are excited. You know, we're excited too. I'm excited because it's just a special thing to see so people rejoicing, knowing that they have future, knowing that they have security and a livelihood. Asante sana Yesu, asante sana Yesu, asante sana Yesu moyoni. Asante sana Yesu, asante sana Yesu, asante sana Yesu moyoni.
So in order to help people with their brain involvement, and really we think of it in terms of inflammation in the brain. So we look for sources of inflammation in the body and try to balance those, and that affects the brain. So typically we'll start with the diet. What are people eating? Because that affects the microbiome in the gut, it affects the permeability of the gut. And when the gut is inflamed, then you know, food particles that we eat get through into the bloodstream. Bacterial toxins can get through into the bloodstream, and that activates our immune system. So when the immune system is activated, it doesn't just stay right there in the bloodstream next to the gut, right? We have circulation, and we have circulation that crosses the blood-brain barrier. So when things get into our blood-brain barrier and our immune system is activated there, it just stays in this inflammatory killing mode. One of the factors that we know is a big issue in the gut is eating gluten for people. It sort of doesn't matter whether you're allergic or not. We've learned that that when we eat gluten, it elevates this protein called zonulin that increases the permeability of the gut. That's called leaky gut. That's gotten to be a pretty common medical term these days. And leaky gut is what it sounds like. It's little microscopic holes in the cellular junctions. And then since gluten is what created those holes, that's the first thing that gets through and activates the immune system, because it shouldn't be in the blood should be sterile. So when that gets into the brain, the immune cells in the brain are called microglia, and when those microglia get turned on, they don't have an off switch. They just keep churning out those inflammatory chemicals until they die, which is reportedly 2 to 3 months. So I'll have some patients tell me, oh, I don't eat much gluten, once a week or once a month. And I tell them, well, you're just staying in that constantly inflamed state. And what happens when we have inflammation in the brain is, well, it affects different people in different ways, but it can affect different structures in the brain, and certainly can manifest as anxiety, depression, cognitive problems, ADHD, all of those factors.
Fascinating. And Dr. Toups, what kind of results have you seen in your patients?
From starting with an anti-inflammatory diet and working with the factors, because that's just the first step, of course, is the diet. But let me tell you that for some people, I have fantastic results with only working on the dietary issues and healing their gut. So I had a patient who came to me with a severe depression. She was crying all day. She was suicidal. And in her case, while we were doing the workup for other factors affecting that depression, I started her on a whole foods diet, eliminate the gluten, eliminate the dairy, since that's another inflammatory factor for people. And this lady came back a few weeks later, and her depression was gone. It was completely gone. Like, that's all I needed to do in her case. Well, I believe I started a few key nutrients like fish oil and vitamin D and B vitamins that are also helpful for the brain. But it was amazing. It was gone, and she was scheduled to have a surgery for her hip, and her hip inflammation went away, and she didn't need to do that. And then fast forward, so great, that was all we needed to do for her. She came back many months later and said, my depression's back, I'm crying again. And it was in January, and she said, I cheated on my diet during the holidays. And I said, well, that's a great clue. You know what to do here now, don't you? And in that case, that was just amazing. The power of food for her, and keeping her diet clean and anti-inflammatory kept her depression at bay. And as soon as she let up on that, there it was, back again. So in her case, that was certainly an area of vulnerability that could be controlled, simply with diet and nutrients.
What happened to you with your health?
So started off like most healthy kids, super, super happy. My mom used to describe it as I would enter a room and it would light up. People would just know that this, in my mom's words, beautiful young boy came into the room and just was full of energy and life. And the best way I can put it is I saw sunlight, I saw color. And then sometime in my early adolescence, I view it now as I stepped into the darkness. For years, I couldn't even define what the word sad meant. I had no up or down. I was just flatline low, and learned to live a mask of what it looked like to be happy. So if you saw me, I could smile, or I would really engage, and you would think I was happy. But inside, absolutely devastated, and never happy, never fulfilled, and just really dark. In late high school, I got diagnosed with ADD, which in retrospect is really a weird, awkward time to get diagnosed with ADD. And then throughout my life, I would get new labels and new diagnoses, and never an opportunity of how to change it. It just was ADD, a new you. Bipolar 2, a new you. Chronic depression, a new you. Suicidal tendencies, a new you.
You had all those diagnoses?
All those diagnoses. And I was an athlete. That's all I did. Ran track, played football, amateur bodybuilder. I went to college on a decathlete scholarship. So when I walked in the room, there was no question of, is he healthy, living a healthy lifestyle? I was the epitome of health. I was 200 plus pounds, no body fat, solid muscle, and nobody questioned. The only cure was psychotherapy and pharmaceutical drugs.
Kevin, you had the perfect mask.
Like, I could almost cry because it is a life that, looking back, was so dark, so selfish, so all about me, but yet because I was just so sad, and nothing could fill that just empty void of self-sadness. And there was no answer from it. No doctor ever said, this doesn't have to be you. This is just you now. And just through being an athlete and being healthy and eating what I thought was healthy food, because there's a big difference between what the average American believes is healthy food and healthy food. Mm-hmm. I had a trainer that one day said, and looking back, it's such a vain way to do it and such a vain way to actually find my freedom, was she said, if you go paleo, you will see amazing results faster. Your six-pack will come back faster. You will look more amazing. So it had nothing to do with my spiritual journey, my want to be a better person and step into the light. It was pure ego-based, kind of like how my life it was the life I lived. I didn't know how to live free and happy. And I went paleo. About 45 days into being paleo, I went home just to say hi to my mom. And I will never forget, the glass my mom was holding dropped to the floor. Now, it wasn't as dramatic as actual glass shattering. It was a plastic glass, but it dropped. And that really made me like, what happened? Mom just looked at me and tears in her eyes, said, you're smiling. Like, not smiling like you smile, but smile like you did when you were a boy. And she was crying. And it was then that I realized, like, wait, I'm not sad anymore. And that word sad is so like paramount in my life, because years and years of therapy, I would have, the therapist would say, how do you feel? Describe the sadness. And when the only feeling you ever know through life is sadness, you can't define it as sadness because that's your baseline.
Nothing to reference it to.
Correct. There is no reference point. The only thing I could describe is sad and suicidal depression. Like, there's no difference. There's either I'm out in the public and being me but masking pain, or I'm in a room for weeks on end and trying to figure out how to climb out of a big dark hole.
What do you think your mum was feeling in that moment? Why was that so meaningful to her?
She got her son back. In all essence of the truth, I was reborn. I became paleo, which made me gluten-free, which made, I now know I was what was called gluten-induced mood disorder. Stephanie says don't use gluten-induced psychosis, bad word. I was gluten-induced mood disorder. And because of, and you said it the best, I had the perfect mask. Because I looked so healthy, there was never a question to my diet. Because the physicians that I went to didn't ever take into account, could the food or types of food or quality of food be the actual contributing factor to why he is what he is? Nobody looked at it. It was, sad, you're this label. Take this pill. This pill will mask your sadness to make you happy.
It was non-celiac gluten sensitivity,
yes,
as well. It's under that banner, correct?
Yes, 100%. Yeah. I am not celiac at all. I don't eat gluten at all anymore. And what is absolutely amazing is now that it is completely out of my life, if I am to have the smallest amount of gluten, it knocks me out. 100% to where I can't even drive home, I'm asleep. at the table, 20 minutes. And
Do you get tempted to eat it?
no.
I didn't think so.
No, zero. Because why? Like, so I can go back in darkness? Like, it is so beautiful to sit here, smile with you, see trees and see color, and know that, like, I feel so, like, why would I rob myself from the greatest gift of being happy?
Wow, what an incredible story. A diet change that Kevin stumbled upon to improve his bodybuilder physique ended up changing his life by lifting his chronic depression. It's astounding the impact that inflammatory foods can have on our health. Now let me just say why wheat is so damaging for, I believe, everyone today, and that is because of the process that it's gone through. It is a part of a group of foods that don't class as being genetically altered. However, the gene itself has been altered, and it's a process called chemical mutagenesis, which is radiation, and it's also having the gene altered. Why doesn't it class as a GMO? The laws really that happened in the 1960s, and then when GMO foods became widely experimented in 1994, fell under different laws and rules. However, from the research, from the fact that we even have a whole disease group, celiac disease, which is based upon sensitivity to wheat. We have so many anecdotal reports of people coming back from parts of Europe that don't have this genetically altered wheat that can eat it and enjoy it and not have any problems. There's so many reasons why we can see that there's something that's happened that has changed wheat as we know it, and it's very easy and logical to understand. One of the major factors you can use to determine this is the fact that it is now a semi-dwarf high yield product. This is Dr. William Davis shared this in the series. It's only knee high. Now it used to be head high, and it used to yield a lot less. Now it's yielding 8 times as much as what it used to. So if that doesn't bring up some red flags for you, whether there could be any downsides to this dramatic way that it's yielding way more than it's supposed to, and for those that believe in God and believe that God made it in its original form, and that this type of alteration is for monetary gain, and these intentions typically cause problems. And mindfully so, they did have some apparent ambitions to feed the world, but no, it didn't help to feed the world. And yes, it's helping to damage and wreak havoc upon people's health, and it causes major issues with people's mental health. So we're going to show you that this is in fact a part of the leaky gut problem that we're experiencing, known as intestinal permeability. And in fact, this wheat that we're eating can get straight into our bloodstream because the body is not designed to be able to break down the types of things that are being put in through this genetically altered wheat. If somebody doesn't want to call it a GMO, I'll call it a GCO, a genetically changed organism, because it is genetically changed, but it's not in the same class as the GMOs. But it is, in fact, as you can test and see in yourself, likely the very worst out of them by a long shot because of this process that it's gone through and how damaging it is for people. Test it out. Take it out for 30 days, then put it back in. See how you feel. You'll probably find, just like everyone else I've tested this on, those severe tummy aches are showing that the body has an aversion to it, and it's not good. And instead of blaming the body and saying you have a food sensitivity, I'd say you have a sensitivity to things that are bad for you, and that is a bad food for you. So that's my take on wheat, and I hope you take that to heart. The ancient grains is something that people can take their own consideration into, the ones that have had no alteration on them, and see what they think about the usage of those. Did you know that 55 diseases have been linked to gluten? And I would say that that issue with the gluten may be in fact the issue with what has happened to the genetic changing of it, including the issue with Roundup, glyphosate, and this is actually what's been the problem. As we know, a lot of these grains have had an ancient legacy, and we're only seeing these dramatic changes in recent years. So let's take that into consideration. There are some signs that you might be intolerant to gluten or wheat. Do you experience digestive issues such as gas, bloating, diarrhea, or constipation? Do you ever feel fatigue or brain fog after eating a meal containing gluten? Do you experience headaches? Do you experience migraine headaches, inflammation, or swelling in your joints, anxiety, depression, or ADD, unexplained low blood iron levels? Have you been diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder, such as Hashimoto's or rheumatoid arthritis? Believe it or not, all of these signs and symptoms can be a connection to the gluten intolerance or wheat intolerance in this instance of what I'm sharing. If you said yes to any of the above, I suggest that you test yourself by doing an elimination diet. All you have to do is strictly remove all gluten-containing products from your diet for 2 to 3 weeks and then reintroduce it. If you find that you felt better when you were off gluten or the wheat products and then worse while you're back on it, then gluten is probably a problem for you. Please bear in mind that you need to do this test strictly in order to know whether it's a trigger for you. But trust me, knowing your triggers is one of the most powerful pieces of information you can ever know in your journey to health. So we've learned that inflammatory foods can lead to an inflamed gut, which can lead to an inflamed and compromised brain. So what else can we do to lower inflammation, to look after our gut? And what part does the microbiome, the good and bad bugs, play in all of this? We've heard that a healthy microbiome is integral for mental and overall health. But having a healthy microbiome requires more than occasional kombucha or a probiotic supplement. Here's Dr. Jay Davidson to explain.
My good friend, Dr. Todd Watts, loves to explain the whole grass concept. That if you have a backyard, and let's say it's full of weeds, and let's use this analogy for the digestive tract, that there's a lot of bad bugs. So the weeds would be bad bugs in the digestive tract, where it's really easy to say, okay, I know that I need more good bacteria in my digestive tract. So what does that mean? I could eat some fermented foods, I could drink fermented foods, I could take probiotics, right? I wanna increase the bacteria in my digestive tract and then maybe feed the bacteria more as well. But that would be equivalent to going to your backyard that's full of weeds and just throwing a bunch of grass seed down when the weeds are still there. It might help to put a few, blades of grass here and there, but the right answer is actually to take the weeds down. And of course, in this analogy, don't use toxins like glyphosate or pesticides, but more Rototil and do the more natural approach. And once we actually take the bad bugs down or the weeds down, then that's the time where we actually want to plant. Is we don't want to just pound nutrients into the body if our body's not ready to receive them. And we end up following this path that we're on and we keep repeating it and we wonder why we're stuck. Well, I can't give up the supplements that I'm taking because if I stop them, what if I was to go backward? And I understand that there's probably a few or a couple that are important for you. However, there's times where we just need to take a step back, restart and say, okay, I'm gonna give this a different approach. Because typically different approaches means that we're gonna get a different result. And the reason that you're watching this right now is that you're struggling with health. So we want to break the habit of what you've been just continually doing, and we want to establish a new one. And so when we're looking at that, it's more important to go after a toxicity first than to go after a deficiency. So toxicity comes first, then deficiency comes second. And I'll give you an example. Let's say that there is a toxicity of chemicals in the body. It's creating inflammation. The cells are inflamed. You're putting nutrients in and you're like, why am I not feeling better? You're drinking water, it's flushing right through you. It's because we're inflamed at the cellular level. And so we need to focus on down-regulating inflammation and supporting to clear out what's actually causing that inflammation, such as toxins, such as a toxicity of infection, right? An overload of infection. And as we clear out those toxicities, then what we find is that the inflammation is down. The cell is more likely to actually accept nutrients, accept hydration, and water doesn't flush right through you, but water actually gets absorbed. Then now that's the time where we focus on putting nutrients in. So typically what happens, Jonathan, is we skip that first phase. We skip the idea of detoxification. We skip the idea of pathogen elimination, and we go right into, well, this nutrient's for this nutrient's for that, and we have it backwards. So if we were just to address chronic infection, which I would recommend parasite infection is first, then we start incorporating detoxification with extracts of fulvic acid and humic acid that are life-giving. They're safe for kids to, the elderly and everybody in between. we actually start binding on to these chemicals like mold, byproducts of mold and lime like ammonia. We start binding on to toxins such as heavy metals, pesticides like glyphosate. When we start removing that, now we actually create an environment that's happier. And it might still be nutrient deficient. However, nutrients just don't come from vitamins and minerals. We actually get an abundance of nutrients from herbs. And this is where adding herbs to our diet can actually be a very impactful and helpful thing. When you actually look at diets back in the day versus today, the standard diet, we find that we actually consumed a lot more herbs previously. Sometimes it was 20% of our diet were actually herbs. Herbs are so much more nutrient dense than actual vegetables. So you can look at, for instance, Jonathan, you can look at kale is known to be a superfood. However, looking at an herb like parsley, way more nutrient dense. So if we can incorporate more herbs into our daily food regimen, and we can also, as we're going after chronic infection and as we're actually detoxifying the body, if we have herbs from a oral consumption like a supplement but herb form, we're actually going to get nutrients from that as well. But that's first, and then we really want to focus with removing the deficiency and getting nutrients in after we've cleared out infection, after we've cleared out toxins, because that's when it's going to get absorbed and we're going to maximize it, versus just putting hundreds of dollars of nutrients in us, whether it's food or supplements, and our body saying, I'm too inflamed, I can't even absorb it, or the critters and bugs are taking it on me. We want to take those down first, then focus with nutrient absorption.
The other factors, one of the huge factors that I really don't want to neglect mentioning is infections. And it's really surprising us in our work with the Bredesen protocol and one of my study groups with Dr. Bredesen, where we're all going over our cases and putting our heads together on this. We're finding that huge numbers of our patients are having infections that are driving some of the cognitive problems. So we're seeing just an epidemic of Lyme disease. We know that Lyme disease is a spirochete that affects the brain. It's the same kind of organism as syphilis. And we're just seeing, tremendous amounts of our dementia patients turning out positive for Lyme disease. Another factor that we see that's driving that brain inflammation is mold or mycotoxin-related illness. And we know that mycotoxins are neuroinflammatory, so they're causing all this inflammation in the brains of sensitive people. Now, with mold, not everyone is sensitive to getting sick with mold. 75% of people, if they have a big mold exposure, they may be ill, but their body will clear those toxins and they'll be fine. But about a quarter of people have a genetic sensitivity. There's an HLA genetic type that we look at for that. And those people, when they get exposed to mold, it just stays in their system and it keeps triggering and triggering the system, and it causes tremendous effects in the brain. I have young people in their 20s that have dementia. I mean, their cognition is so bad. I treat several UC Berkeley students, brilliant young people that have had to drop out of school that can't even read anymore because of the effects on their brain. And then once we remove them from the moldy environment and do various things to bind up that mold and support their immune system, their cognition will come back. So,
to what level does it come back?
It will come back. Yeah, people can get their brains back.
Meaning that they're fully functioning.
People can get their functioning back. It's a path, of course, when you get that ill, but people can definitely get their functioning back. And it's the same thing with elderly people dementing as well. So if we can intervene and find all these factors that are driving their degeneration of their brain and remove those factors, then we actually can get cognition back.
What I look at is the toxins in our environment can definitely inhibit the production or the utilization of the neurotransmitters. So in our house, what we look at is, are you burning candles? Are you using all kinds of different cleaning solutions that are toxic to your bodies? Are Are we using or are we cleansing our air and purifying our air? The other thing to consider is there mold in our home? And I have found that mold in our homes can be one of the biggest cause or the worst issues with neurotransmitter functioning and utilization. So, you know, what we are what we eat. We always hear that, but we are what we're exposed to, and those exposures are from either the foods we take in, the water we drink, the air we breathe, the things we put on our skin, our beds as well, and then what is brewing in our environment to make us unhealthy, and also to either block or inhibit the function of enzymes, proteins, neurotransmitters, and overall health. And what we've found in research is one of the best things to do for anxiety and depression, for example, is exercise, because it upregulates so many reactions in our bodies, as well as it helps to get oxygen in there. And oxygen is so vital for conversion of many of our reactions in our body, and also for optimal health.
Kat, I want to ask you about your personal story with what you had, which would be described as dementia.
So in my case, and this is how I learned functional medicine, it's how many of the early adopters of functional medicine have come to the functional medicine table. We have illness, or someone in our family has illness, and as physicians we can clearly see that there is no clear path to treat the kind of illness that we have. In my case, I developed what's called multiple chemical sensitivity, so I got allergic to everything. My immune system was just on hyperdrive. It was reacting to everything. I was allergic to many, many kinds of foods. I couldn't walk into a grocery store because the smells of the chemicals would give me rashes and hives. I was just covered with rashes and hives, and completely with all that inflammation that was happening coming out through my skin. Of course, it was a systemic inflammation. I had severe fatigue. I could barely get out of a chair for a year. And with all that inflammation, it was eating up my brain. And so when I stopped working, I was doing Alzheimer research. I used to run a clinical trials research center, and I've done over 100 clinical trials, and I've done 20 trials in Alzheimer's. So I was doing dementia trials, and I came to realize that I was as cognitively impaired as some of my patients in the trial. I would do a test called a Many-Mental Status, where I'd give them 3 words to remember, and I'd have to write down the 3 words so that I could ask them a few minutes later, because I couldn't remember those words. And I had given that test for over 20 years, so that was quite an amazing realization.
Was it discouraging
that
for you?
I had no short-term memory.
Was it discouraging for you?
Was it discouraging? Well, I think I was just trying so hard to survive every day. People asked me, were you scared? And every day was just such a struggle trying to function at my normal level, which of course I clearly wasn't doing at that point. I couldn't drive a car very well anymore. My husband got in the car with me one day and he said, "Kat, what's wrong with you? You're like a little old lady." And I said, "I don't know, there's so many things happening when you drive." And my processing speed was so poor that I couldn't integrate those things well. And I actually lost the ability to back up or parallel park. I could not do those things. My brain just couldn't sequence how to do that. And I was a good driver before, and I'm a good driver now, but I certainly could not do that at all. I couldn't do things on a computer that I had been doing. My poor husband, I would ask him, "Dorian, how do I do this?" And he'd say, "I just showed you that." And I wouldn't even remember that he just showed me. I could barely dial a phone number. I would get confused sometimes and have to start over 2 or 3 times. And so I started learning functional medicine.
Where would you be right now if you hadn't done something?
I would be drooling in a nursing home by now if I had not done all that I had done to reverse that inflammation and that cognitive decline. So,
and what does it feel like for you to look at that picture of you in that old folks home drooling?
Well, it's not a visualization you really want to have, but I think it's just the perspective that we don't have to have people drooling in a nursing home. We have the tools now to look at all of these factors that are affecting their cognitive decline and put them back in balance and stop all the holes in the leaking roof, as Dr. Bredesen says. And nobody should suffer that way anymore. I was in my early 50s when I got ill, and I've worked with people diagnosed with Alzheimer's in their early 50s, and it's a different critter. It goes very fast. People in their early 50s, when they have cognitive decline, you don't, typically with Alzheimer's, we say, okay, it's going to be a 10-year process, and your brain will degenerate and, eventually stop functioning. But when it affects younger people, it goes fast. And of course, now as we're starting to look at all these factors that are causing and perpetuating the dementia and driving it, what we're seeing more and more in some of the younger people is the CIRS, or the chronic inflammatory response syndrome from Lyme and mold and those kind of factors. So it's really, it's so exciting, that we can find these treatment targets. Now, toxins are another thing that drives, neuroinflammation and degeneration. So now we have commercially available tests that we can use to look at levels of toxic chemicals. We can look at levels of heavy metals. All of those things cause neurodegeneration. So those all become, part of what we're looking at.
How do you get better, Kat?
How did I get better? Little by little, I went through all the modules through the Institute for Functional Medicine, and I first went to a conference called Food is Medicine, and that opened my eyes. It changed my life. It changed my practice. It changed my life. To understand how food has the power to turn on and off our genes, and affect our microbiome, and affect everything in our health. So, I ate a relatively healthy diet, but it was definitely an eye-opener with that. And
some things were inflammatory for you, though, weren't they?
Well, at the point for me, I had become sensitive to everything. So many foods. I went on a diet that eliminated gluten, dairy, eggs, soy, nuts, seafood, later legumes, later nightshades. I was reacting to pretty much everything. But what happens when you're in that state is it's that your gut is so leaky that every single thing you eat is getting through those microscopic holes in your gut and activating your immune system. So in that case, the real key becomes heal your gut. Do everything you can to, heal that leaky gut so that all of that stuff is not chronically activating your immune system. And that, of course, is a process. And when you're as sick as I was, it was not a fast process. I would say, it took me 8 months of that very restricted diet to start to make some headway with the rashes and hives that were all over me. And my patients will say, how could you stay on that diet for so long? And I tell them I had no other option. There was no options. I could take steroids. They would suppress my immune system, but that I knew enough that wasn't going to be the answer to heal anything. And we know that when somebody is really allergic to gluten, which I certainly was, there's these little villi that line the gut. And they're like little finger-like projections, and they absorb our nutrients from our food. And when you actually have a gluten allergy, those things get chopped off and blunted. And it takes about 8 months for those villi to regrow when you stop your gluten for somebody that's gluten sensitive. And it's interesting, I learned that after the fact. And when I thought about my timeline, I thought, about 8 months on that diet is when I started to make some headway. So we'll see when we eliminate things for some people in their diet, like my patient with severe depression. She just eliminated gluten and dairy, and in 4 to 6 weeks she was a new woman. Some people, we see that, it's fantastic. Other people are very, very sick. Their gut is very, inflamed and leaky, and it may take a long time, but I think it's really important to empower people to stay that course, because it will give you results if you keep going and work on all those factors.
Kat, you experienced dementia, and you had lost all this cognitive function, and you said that you'd be drooling in an old person's home, a nursing home, if you hadn't have done what you had done.
Yeah.
Where are you today? Are you, what's your mind like? What are you able to do? What's your daily life look like?
Oh, my daily life is, a whirl of neuroplasticity. I'm constantly researching things every single day, trying to learn all these factors to help people. there was a clear time when I felt like my brain came back online. And that's how I thought of it. My brain was offline and suddenly it was online again. And I remember saying to my husband, wow, I can hold the phone number in my head and dial the phone number. And my husband, who's had ADHD all his life, said, well, I could never do that. And I go, yeah, but I could always do that. And now I can do it again. So, it was, of course, a gradual process. But there seemed to be a clear shift of a time that my brain did come back and start to work.
You just don't really sound like someone to me that has dementia.
No, I don't have dementia. But I did definitely have dementia. And, dementia, it's a broad term, right? It's cognitive decline. Your brain is degenerating. And mine certainly was, in 2009 when I stopped working, it certainly was.
1 in 3 seniors die of Alzheimer's or dementia, right? 1 in 3.
Maybe even 1 in 2. Over 85, it's 1 in 2. And it's expected to be even a higher incidence than that if we keep on the current trajectory. I mean, we're getting
what?
Well, we're having more and more toxins in our world. All of our, much of our food is sprayed with Roundup, which seems to have neurotoxic and carcinogenic effects. And there's so many chemicals. We slather our bodies with things with fragrance and parabens that are endocrine disruptors. And it's just such a sorry state that our babies are born with, over 200 chemicals in their blood already from whatever the mother has used, ingested, or been exposed to. And these are young women, so 20s, 30s, and the babies are born with all these chemicals. So that certainly is one of the factors that's driving, I suspect, this high incidence of Alzheimer's.
Toxins are a massive trigger. They are a massive trigger of causing health issues, causing symptoms like anxiety, depression, brain type problems. And most of those things get triggered from issues in the digestive tract. So when we're looking at the digestive tract, it is an area that's very important for excretion of toxins. It's an important area of actually absorbing nutrients into the body. So when we look at the digestive tract, we need to look at, well, what are the toxins that disrupt the digestive tract? And one of those is glyphosate. We know that glyphosate damages the microbiome, the bacteria of our digestive tract. And if we have a leaky gut, we have a leaky brain. And what does that mean? Leaky gut means that things are essentially sneaking through the gut barrier. Think of it like Swiss cheese. And when there's leaky gut, that means the holes are wider open and things can get through, invaders and toxins that normally wouldn't. Leaky brain means that these chemicals will also get up into the brain, and these chronic infections will also get up into the brain. So leaky brain, leaky gut, they run parallel. Glyphosate is a massive toxicity issue. There's been lawsuits now. Somebody actually won almost $300 million from Monsanto, who's now been bought out by Bayer. They want to try to get rid of the Monsanto name, but unfortunately that toxin has created a lot of issues within our bodies internally. And therefore, you were mentioning, Jono, about parasites. The reason that there's a massive parasite epidemic is because of the toxins. Parasites are attracted to these toxins to actually absorb them. So essentially they take a burden off of us. However, then we get the downside of the parasite. And when we look at the parasite's role with the brain, with how we process our neurotransmitters, parasites eat the protein that we consume. So let's say we're eating some food, that protein needs to be broken down into amino acids. Those amino acids then are used to manufacture our neurotransmitters, serotonin, dopamine, all the neurotransmitters. When parasites are prevalent, what happens is that these parasites actually consume the protein and do not allow our bodies to break the proteins down. So what happens with parasites is they consume the protein, and it doesn't allow our bodies to break the protein down to get the amino acids to then get the neurotransmitters. So we're looking at toxins. We look at toxicity that's actually creating an environment for chronic infection like parasites to thrive. But we're also looking at the fact that these toxins are actually damaging the microbiome, which is a whole nother factor by itself. So we're looking at, okay, so if there's mind symptoms, anxiety, depression, we know that the neurotransmitters get messed up, right? We're looking at a couple trees in a forest and we can identify that these are impactful things that are actually creating problems or are byproducts. The thing that I love to focus on as a clinician is what are the sources of why the neurotransmitters are getting messed up. And when I look, I see the digestive tract and its issues. I mean, there's a modern day epidemic of people with digestive tract problems. And we're seeing a modern day epidemic of parasite infection and parasites consuming the protein to not give the building blocks, such as amino acids, to make neurotransmitters. So I have no issues with neurotransmitter supplementation or things to help produce serotonin or dopamine or epinephrine or norepinephrine or these other neurotransmitters. My mind from a clinician standpoint says, well, let's always make sure that we get to the source, right? Let's make sure that we actually fix the digestive tract and these things that are not allowing our body to actually manufacture the neurotransmitters so that we can calm down and we can be healthy and normal again.
Overcoming mood and cognitive disorder requires getting to the root cause of the issue. We need to identify and eliminate triggers in our lives. What are the triggers in your life? Do you have food sensitivities? Do you have mold in your environment? Are you exposing yourself to glyphosate, which is a dangerous chemical found in pesticides? What about your personal care products? Are your shampoos and soaps, perfumes, makeup, and laundry detergents toxic? Is there a chance you may have parasites? All of these have a negative impact on the mind and body. But the good news is that you have control over all these factors. You can limit or remove these things from your lives, and there are certain things that you can do to enhance your body's detoxification process. But there is a science to detoxification, and it's important that we start by supporting our body's drainage pathways and ensuring that they're clear and moving.
Yes, how we want to approach from a protocol and phase standpoint is we want to support drainage, which would be making sure that the colon is moving, you're not constipated, because that, if you're constipated, everything else gets backed up. Want to support the liver, bile duct, and kidneys as a drainage pathway to make sure things are moving. And also, like you said, want to support the lymphatic system because there's a lot more fluid actually in the lymphatic system than there is in the cardiovascular. And it's a big source of our immune system as well. But unfortunately, these infections can live safely within the lymphatic system at times, like Lyme disease. So we want to support and make sure all the pathways are moving, or if you want to call it the pipes, right? Making sure the colon's moving, the liver bile duct is moving, the kidneys are moving, the lymphatic system is moving. Then when we know we've supported those pathways, now we can start to go after pathogen elimination. Then we can start focusing with detoxification, because if we jump, and I did this myself and I reacted over 10 years ago and almost never went back to heavy metal detox because I started there and I reacted, not knowing that there's an order. So we want to support the normal pathways, then move to the next phase, because if we go to eliminate pathogens or we go to remove toxins and the normal pathways that clear these things out of our body are clogged up, they've got nowhere to go, we start reacting, we start getting symptoms, we start getting inflamed, and we wonder, well, this must not be right for me. And oftentimes it's because we didn't prepare the body. So opening the drainage pathways up are number one. As far as the liver bile duct, I believe coffee enemas are a really important tool, and it's not necessarily a supplement you're ingesting, you're going up the other direction, and it might be very uncomfortable, this topic, if you've never heard about it or done it. It's a very powerful tool though for the liver bile duct. What I meant by uncomfortable was the idea typically, but once you start doing coffee enemas, most people look back and like, how did I not do them? How did I survive without doing them? Because they're so noticeable. So it's definitely worth looking into that topic. Infrared saunas, infrared mats are great tools because when you heat your body up, the fluid moves better. Understand these pathogens like parasites, Lyme disease, these other infections, they like to actually cool the body temperature down, which creates stagnation. It means the lymphatic fluid doesn't move as well. It means the bile in the bile duct doesn't move as well. It means the colon doesn't move as well. And these critters, these bad pathogens, thrive in an environment where the fluids aren't moving well. So increasing core body temperature is very beneficial for the drainage pathways. But there's also products that can help with making sure the bowels move normally, that stimulate the nervous system to have normal formed bowel movements. And often we really want to look at 2 to maybe even 3 times a day. If you only go once a day or even less, that would be on the constipation side of things. And when you start pathogen elimination, when you start detoxifying, it's better to be more frequent in the bowels than actually less. And not at the point where you have diarrhea, but you want to make sure that things are moving out very easily. When we're looking at things from an herb category, things like N-acetylcysteine is very supportive of the liver and the bile duct. It's great for the liver. Things like milk thistle is amazing and actually helping to move the bile through the liver, actually helps to increase bile production in the liver along with some of the detoxification the liver does. We're looking at things like marshmallow root, amazing for the digestive tract, but also a very powerful tool for the liver bile duct. Looking at beetroot is great for the blood, but it also falls right in that liver category. And then when we're looking at lymphatic, the lymphatic system could be ample hydration. It could be lymphatic massage. It could be dry brushing with a natural bristle brush, or there are herbal products that actually stimulate the movement of the lymphatic system. So if we look at the drainage category, we want to support that.
So a compromised lymphatic system will negate the detoxification or the drainage of toxins in the body and also the brain. So the lymphatic system drains into the lymphatic system, which then go down into the kidneys or the liver and then out through the body the way it needs to. And so when we don't have a healthy lymphatic system, then we have what we call a wet state tissue state. And when the wet tissue state is there, it allows for infection to happen. So what we see is basically it goes back down to 3 words. Irritation leads to inflammation, which leads to infection. And my friend Dr. Dan Newsom always talks about that. And I'm in agreement with that because inflammation will create this state where infection thrives. And so that's why the importance of the lymphatic system and health of it will be vital because of the fact that if we can't clear out these toxins, infection will just take over. So then we have to clear out infection, we have to get the drainage pathways happening again, and we have to then clear out what created the problem in the first place. Lymphatic health can be highly affected by irritants such as an infection, like parasites, specifically big time with viruses and Lyme disease. Another thing that it can be affected by is way too much toxins. The toxins that we are really getting into our system that will downplay our ability to detoxify it. So then it backs up. So if our liver and our kidneys aren't working, then we're backing up our lymphatic system and become toxic that way. Another thing that really highly affects it is emotional health. So the emotional health will downregulate the ability to detoxify and cleanse through the lymphatic system. And that's why it's going to be part of the process of addressing mental health and figuring out mindset and helping these people understand that there's hope for them, that they can balance out, that they can overcome some of the issues that they're dealing with. And mental health such as schizophrenia and mood disorders and bipolar, you really have to look at several things. One of those being heavy metal toxins, another one being infections that can drive that, such as parasites and chronic deep viral infections.
Then we move into the parasite side. The reason you start with parasites is everything else lives or is housed within parasites. Mold spores live in parasites. Toxins are stored in parasites. Chronic infection like bacteria and viruses such as Lyme disease and Epstein-Barr virus live inside of parasites. So we don't want to jump ship over and miss parasites as being kind of that mother cell. We want to hit that first head on. And as we go after parasites, and a common thought is, well, I'm in a first world country, I don't have parasite infection. And I'm gonna say clinically, that's the exact opposite that I've seen. And I believe the reason we're in a modern day epidemic of parasite infection is because of the modern day epidemic of toxicity. Toxins are creating an environment where parasites are attracted to. But in order to detoxify the body properly, we have to clear the parasites that are storing these toxins now. Otherwise, we're never going to be able to release them. So when we're looking at parasites, one of the top things that I recommend, because I've had my own personal experience with it, it sounds gross, but pulling worms out of my rear end, and they were dead. But going to the bathroom and looking down after you wipe, and you're like, that didn't feel right, and seeing them hang from you into the water, that's a monumental moment that changed my life and perspective on parasites. Because I said at that moment, wait a minute, if I have these, a relatively healthy guy, who else does? And that's when I started seeing some of the greatest results with my clients, was implementing parasitic treatments. And I love the natural herbal route. The top thing, and the thing that really got those long ones out of me and started my journey, was Mimosa pudica seed. And it's important that you get the seed version of Mimosa pudica, because Mimosa pudica, the seed version, is actually fat soluble. It's very thick and slimy, and it's really great for the digestive tract in general. Even if there's no parasites, it's a great digestive tract supporter. It's really kind of taken hold in the functional medicine world, because it's essentially a gut grabber, a gut scrubber. So if somebody's dealing with candida, excessive biofilm, fungus, along with parasites, it's a great tool. So I love Mimosa pudica seed. I recommend, from a typical dosing, we're looking at 2 caps twice a day. Now, you have to judge if you're in that category of, well, doc, I'm a little sensitive and I tend to react. Remember, support drainage, but start low. There's no rush, there's no need to sprint or jump too far ahead. You could start with 1 capsule of Mimosa pudica seed once a day, then work up to 1 cap twice a day, then eventually get up to 2 caps twice a day. And there's some people where they can handle a lot and not notice anything. Then those are great people to start at 2 caps twice a day. And then if you don't notice anything after a month, we want to increase it. Go to 3 caps twice a day for a week. If you don't notice anything, go to 4 caps twice a day for a week. If you don't notice anything, work up to 5 caps. I mean, there's so many different cases where at a couple caps, people saw stuff coming out, they felt changes, their skin broke out a little bit as they started clearing toxins, and all of a sudden it started clearing up. And then there's other cases that they had to get up to a higher dose, and then the wall kind of broke down and busted open. And I want to be very clear, Mimosa pudica seed is amazing. It's not your typical antiparasitic where you can actually take it every day. A lot of antiparasitics, they're good to cycle on and off of, but it's not a standalone. I highly recommend other antiparasitic and other immune system supports, such as clove, which is great at killing parasite eggs, such as Vedanga, which is in the Ayurvedic medicine category and has been used for many years in the parasite and antiparasitic world. Looking at things like neem, holorina. These different herbs are very beneficial with going after parasites. So using Mimosa pudica seed as a base, along with some other antiparasitics, is really a great 1-2 knockout punch to start clearing these critters out of you. Now, if you don't see anything, it's important to remember that only 30% of the parasites are actually visible by the naked eye. So the vast majority are actually not visible by the naked eye. So when you go number 2 and you look in the toilet and you're like, I don't see anything, first of all, typically, and it's a little gross, but if you take some like plastic forks or, like wooden chopsticks or something and kind of poke around, a lot of times you'll see things in the formed stool when you break it apart that you didn't see. And even if you don't see anything, remember 70% are not visible by the naked eye. But there's great power when you can actually see things come out of you to know you're on the right path.
And so as we detox, whether we're detoxing from infection, we're detoxing from heavy metals, we're detoxing from pesticides, herbicides, or we're detoxing emotionally, all of those are really important to do every year for everyone. And that way you're avoiding what the epidemics are today, which is neurodegenerative health. So we're seeing so much Alzheimer and dementia coming up, Parkinson's, and many mood disorders as well. So as you get older, you want to be proactive, not reactive in your health. If you're younger, keep that same mentality. You want to be proactive in your health, not reactive. Okay, so some of the products I really like, one I really start with a lot of times is a Mimosa pudica seed. That product is really gelatinous, and it goes through and binds on to just gunk in the GI system. It helps to just be that gut grabber or gut scrubber. And there again, what we want is optimal health means optimal cleansing of the digestive system. What I use, herbs that I use for clearing out infections like parasites and bacteria and yeast are Ayurvedic herbs such as Vedanga, neem, clove, and kutaja. Triphala is another good one that really is beneficial. I find those are less reactive than other ones. Other things that can be beneficial as well as blue tansy or tansy herb. There's some wormwood and worm seed. There's a number of great beneficial herbs that will help with the liver. Some of those ones with liver are dandelion root, milk thistle, parsley, beetroot. Those, making sure you're giving those proper things for the liver is going to be key, right? Another thing I look at and using is going to be bioactive carbon molecules, extracts of fulvic and humic acids that are going to protect those herbs in combination with them, and they're also going to help drive them into specific areas at the right pHs. And I use those a lot with the process of binding different types of toxins. And they're great for binding onto these heavy metals and binding onto these herbicides and pesticides to remove them. And they have a high enough energy to take them all the way out of the body. And then the other thing I like is in binding some of these endotoxins or toxins from infection. There's things like yucca root that's really good, broccoli sprout extracts that help upregulate the body's own system of detoxification. And then sometimes we may be deficient in some minerals. Well, lipidem, for example, is vital for conversion and different sulfur-based issues that people may have. So if people have food sensitivities, it could be the fact that they're just deficient in some of these minerals. Or it could be the fact that they have parasites creating problematic issues. So these products will help to bind some of the ammonia or byproducts of bacteria and of parasites. And then at the cellular level, we hear about glutathione. Oxygen is phenomenal. If you can find what we call a stabilized oxygen molecule, and exercise that will help upregulate oxygen as well. And that is probably the most important part of what we're looking at right now to begin with. There's so many benefits and herbs that can help us out. Just take a system at a time, usually digestive system first, and then bring in the detox organs.
You've now been equipped with amazing tools to optimize your health, and I really encourage you to take action. I can tell you my wife and I did a parasite protocol, just like the one you've heard about, and we experienced incredible results. We were shocked at the amount of parasites we passed, and we had no idea what we had within us. For me, removing these parasites drastically improved my fatigue. It also drastically improved my digestive health and all the stomach upsets that I was having. And for Lori, it was a major factor in her recovery from anxiety and depression, and it was also a major help in her whole recovery from irritable bowel syndrome. Like, these things actually just turned around in the course of a couple of weeks after parasites left for us. And that was, for her, irritable bowel syndrome, hypoglycemia, anemia, hives, migraines, chronic pain on her body, by which we were getting sometimes 4 adjustments a week with the chiropractor. So many issues that she was having in such pain and relief that we had to, in a sense, medicate the issue, even with chiropractors that we believe in, but it's not supposed to be used like that. And we found the root cause and we got rid of it. So please take action on doing a parasite protocol. If you do nothing else, make sure you do that and eliminate some of these toxic foods, because those two things are going to have such a dramatic impact on your life, and you're going to see such positive changes. And please don't like circle back and complain with the same problems in a month's time, having not done anything on this issue. It's seriously a big issue, and if you don't take action on it, you can expect to continue to have the same problems. And in fact, on this point, we see some challenges at times when people say, hey, look, I feel terrible when I take a plant-based diet and I feel great when I eat meat. Well, that's a problem, because we shouldn't be making a choice on what we're eating based on what feels right for us. Like, how often do things go wrong in our lives when we just make choices on what we feel? I'm saying, yeah, choose whatever you eat based on what you want to eat and what you feel like is right for you, but based off research, not off how you feel, because if you do it off how you feel, you're going to be catering often to the parasites and other issues that are happening within your digestive system. So I'm saying, you know, if you look at what my wife and I did, we actually got rid of the problem that was causing the issue for all the food sensitivities. She had a whole long list, and certainly she couldn't go plant-based, and not that we're saying that you have to do that or anything like that, but she couldn't even if she wanted to, and that's what a lot of people have reported to us. I can't even do this if I try. It's really not about like whether it's plant-based or whether it's meat or not. It's really not about that. It's about getting rid of the things that are harming you, and it's not found in the meat or in the plant-based foods. It's often found in herbs. See what I mean? We're just polarizing. It's not needed. We need to get to the root cause of the problem. So get to that root cause, get rid of it, use the herbs to get rid of it, and then choose what makes sense for you. But obviously a diet that has moderation and that has the hallmarks of what we see in the 5 longest living groups of people across the world, studied by National Geographic in Dan Buettner's Blue Zone study. All of these groups of people are certainly eating diets that we can all respect and see as being helpful. And they are diets that are low in their animal intake, not necessarily no, but lower, and a lot lower than any diet that's being proclaimed here in the West, in the US, in America, and how much we're eating animal products. Certainly they can be helpful in certain settings, and I'm for that as well, but I'm for a better planet as well. A better planet, a better way of sustaining our environment, and a way of being humane to these animals that have been entrusted with us. So just think about all those things. Let's have a wide mindset here. I'm obviously a filmmaker here. If I put a message into the world and it helps create a worse world, but it's good for some people, then I haven't really answered the question. So have a think about that and what that means. But we're going to keep going here. But remember, it's not about this or that diet. It's about getting herbs to get rid of the parasites, and then choose what you like. Choose what works for you. Choose what makes sense for you. Another topic that we haven't dived into in our series just yet is macular degeneration. Believe it or not, macular degeneration is not an inevitable byproduct of getting older. Our experts have a much more empowering message for us today. Check it out.
Macular degeneration is actually twice as common as Alzheimer's disease. It doesn't get enough attention. Now, when we're looking at the eyes, we have to always go back to what is the source or sources of my eye condition or my eye issues. And it's been documented that parasites are a key factor of actually causing macular degeneration. So if they're one of the causes of macular degeneration, then we have to remove the source. And remember, parasites are one of those keys to unlock. Now, as you're parasite cleansing, you might actually see eye floaters. That's a common symptom that'll come about. And there's an intimate connection of parasites and the eyes. We also have to remember that toxicity is a major factor as well. So when it comes down to, hey, doc, I've been diagnosed with, and fill that condition in, something like macular degeneration, it still comes back to the fundamentals of what's holding us back as a whole: chronic infection and chronic toxicity. But if you were to say, hey, Dr. J, I've been diagnosed with macular degeneration, first thing that would come to my mind is we need to work at parasite. We have to work at clearing out the parasite infection. But remember, the massive amount of clearing out, once you kill parasites, it's got to have a pathway to move. So that's where we have to support the drainage pathways. Have to make sure that your colon is moving. Have to make sure the liver bile duct is supported. Have to make sure the lymphatic system is moving so that the brain can drain the debris. The lymphatic system is 2 times as much fluid as the cardiovascular system. It's vitally important to the body. It's an important area because that's where a lot of our immune system function is at. The white blood cells going after chronic infection. However, once you actually kill something like a parasite, it's got to move somewhere. So let's say you have parasites in your brain. Let's say you have parasites that are affecting the eyes. Well, once you kill them, then how does your body clear it out? And my understanding is that the glymphatic system, which is the brain drainage, has a direct link to the lymphatic system. So anything that gets detoxed or killed will oftentimes get dumped into the lymphatic system via the brain drainage, which will then end up into the digestive tract. So we have to make sure that the drainage pathways are moving in order to safely detox and also clear out the chronic infection of the brain. So don't think of the brain as separate. Think of it as all connected, and we need to support all the pieces of it.
Dementia, macular degeneration, Parkinson's, do they and another, do they have different protocols, or are they essentially the same?
They're pretty much the same. For the visual problems, you want to throw in astaxanthin and the xanthines. You want to throw in some lutein, make sure you're getting those, because those are essential for optical health. Great.
And then, and what could you tell me about macular degeneration? What's the issue there? What's happening with that?
There's an autoimmune phenomena where your body's kind of attacking its own retina. And there's a breakdown of the optic fibers and optic nerves, and you start losing vision, and the macula is a specific part of the vision. It's the central vision where you see color and see more specifically. You can see motion out here, but your color vision comes more from the central vision, from the macula. It's a little mound in the eyeball where there's just a whole lot of nerve endings, rods and cones, a whole lot more cones which see the color than typical for the rest of the eye. So your central vision and your color vision are focused there, no pun intended.
Great. All right, and so then that's really helpful. So then now what does somebody do to help reverse that macular degeneration?
Well, a diet again is critical. That's the most critical component, but it's tough. Macular degeneration is tough. We're getting some really good results from stem cells now. You inject those right into the eyeball. That sounds terrible, but it's actually not difficult and not terribly painful for that. So just numb up the eyeball, and it's not a difficult procedure. Okay. But it can be hugely restorative for macular degeneration.
Great. And then,
or if you're adverse to a needle in the eyeball, you can try to guide those there with optical laser systems. It's a little less effective than just putting them right there in the organ, but it can be done.
And do you believe that they actually do get guided by these lasers?
Yeah, you can show that the stem cells line up along the light. It kind of think of magnetizing metal filings. It pre-magnetizes them, if you would. It pre-sensitizes them to the light, to that certain wavelength and frequency and the characteristics of that light, and then they're attracted to it. They definitely are, just like magnetic filings to a magnet.
Toxins, leaky gut, parasites, just to name a few, can all be triggers to poor mental health. However, not all triggers are physical. Negative emotional experiences or traumatic events can also be triggers for depression and anxiety. These traumatic events can be so powerful that they not only stick in your memory for years to come, but they can literally change your genetic expression and body chemistry. But thankfully, these traumas and subsequent genetic changes can be overcome and reversed if addressed properly.
Well, walking through aggressive stage 3 ovarian cancer, it was terrifying, number one. And I knew in the bottom of my heart that there was something else there. There was something that I hadn't quite figured out, which was probably a trigger. I could feel it. And when I started studying the work of Dr. Hammer in German New Medicine, and an offshoot is recall healing and total biology, this work that he created, he mapped out areas of the brain that tie to different organs and glands, and then he also correlated different types of traumas. He was an oncologist, different types of traumas with different types of cancer or different types of disease. So what he discovered was that when there's been a shock or a trauma in your life, it'll hit the brain, the body, and the psyche all simultaneously. And then that will affect the biology. And the biology will run these programs in an effort to help us survive, to get us through this trauma, to get us through this stress. We ultimately want to try to resolve these traumas and move on, but sometimes they follow us around our whole entire lives, and then we can't understand why we're always depressed or we've got something chronically wrong with us. And it begins with a shock or a trauma that we take on. So for me, it was when I was 3 years old and I was taken away pretty much violently in the middle of the night from my father. My mother ran off, took the 4 kids and ran off with another man. And that registered on my brain as a 3-year-old as a loss conflict and a separation conflict from my father. How is a 3-year-old supposed to resolve that? You know, she's just going along with what her mother said. So my brain actually had a mark, and I've done my brain scan twice. And you can see on a brain scan, you can see these marks. They look like tree rings. And each of those rings on your brain represent a specific trauma. And when you know the mapping of the brain, you can read that brain scan almost like a psychic reading. I actually had mine read. And she said, first of all, congratulations, it's not coming back, meaning the cancer. And I was like, I need to know why. And then, and then she told me all about myself based upon my brain scan. She could tell what kind of traumas I had, and it was fascinating. So I had to figure it out. And so I've been trying to disprove it for years. And, you know, Dr. Hammer was right on the money. And so there have been extensions of his work that are also really valid, recall healing, total biology. And I use this work in my practice every single day, because for every disease, there is a shock or a series of shocks and traumas. And we have to get to those, unravel them, free the brain, and even more than that, we're freeing the inner child that was hurt. Because many times these patterns will follow us around our whole entire lives in an effort to try to resolve them. Our brain keeps replaying this like Groundhog Day, trying to get a resolution. And literally we can make a timeline and we can find this pattern go through your whole life if something is unresolved.
So with a lot of this, we're going back to childhood, is that right?
Absolutely.
And to the womb?
Yes.
Okay, so let's take us there. You know, the person watching that has depression or anxiety right now, take them back. And you can do this with me, like let's get really hands-on here. Take me back, and I don't know if I'll be the case study here because it would be a little bit personal, but there's certain aspects where you could do with me, which you know, so let's see what makes sense. But take the person back, especially that's watching, so they can help identify some of these things, and then we can get into solutions, but identification and diagnosis needs to come first, so take us there.
Okay, so the thing that you want to remember, what I spoke about a minute ago, was every type of trauma affects a certain organ or gland. Mm-hmm. For depression and anxiety, the target organ is actually the brain itself. So the brain takes on the trauma, and it'll affect your hormones, it'll affect your emotions. So the conflicts, the traumas that tie to depression they have to do with territory, not loss of territory or arguments in the territory. You know, your parents constantly fighting at home, or not being given your own space in the territory. You can't mark your territory. Those types of things tie to depression. So those shocks and traumas, they hit the side of the brain, here and here. And this is also where your hormone relays are. So if you get enough of these traumas, you can start stunting your hormone balance. So marking the territory, loss of the territory, this will affect coronary arteries, it'll affect kidneys, it'll affect the larynx and the cervix. These territorial conflicts can be a really big deal.
So if somebody has depression or anxiety, and let's start with depression. If somebody's in that state right now, can you help them identify where some of these experiences may have originated, help guide them back into childhood where these feelings started first getting experienced?
Right, so the surrounding factors with depression, it's having to do with conflicts and disputes and arguments within your territory, within your home. Did your parents fight a lot? Did your grandparents fight a lot? Were you allowed to have your own territory? And if you aren't allowed to have your own territory, then that can lead you into frustration. It can lead you into devaluation and guilt, and therefore depression. I think of the word frustration, and I think that equals depression. So if you're feeling frustrated, if you're feeling devalued, and then you're feeling guilty, that's a recipe for depression. And it's unresolved from childhood typically. Now sometimes you can take on stuff from your mother and stuff from your father while you're in utero developing. And then it becomes what's called your project purpose, to finish their unresolved stuff for them. And you're like, where did this depression come from? It's just been a chronic depression your whole entire life. Well, you might be trying to resolve it for your parents. And some of the keys to getting yourself out of depression are to be looking forward into the future. A lot of people who are stuck in depression, they're stuck in the past. And it may not even be your own past. It might be your parents' past. Look into your family tree. Who else had depression? Were you named after somebody who was depressed? Their unfinished business gets passed down through the line. And so then it ends up on your shoulders, and it can even be magnified. So by not living in the past and always having goals in the future, and I'm not just talking, just a basic goal. I mean really specific goals. Like in 1 month, I want to accomplish this. In 6 months, I want to accomplish this specific thing. And then you go out a year and 5 years and 10 years and 20 years. That is the key to getting out of depression, is to always be moving forward. It's when we get stuck in the past, that's when we stay frustrated and devalued and guilty and depressed.
So the ADD, ADHD problem is much bigger than people even imagine, because it's hypersensitivity, hypercompulsive, hyperactive, hypersensitive, hypershy, hyperaggressive. All these things become hyper when we have inhibited dopamine function in the brain. And when we can normalize brain function, then those problems become dramatically less. Instead of being big problems, they become like little problems, little neuroses that we work throughout our life to manage and be effective. So what parents don't know is that when you give children Ritalin, Adderall, prescribed drugs for ADHD, Harvard University, 6 other universities have now discovered, we didn't know this before, that they cause brain damage. Now, damage is a scary word. I would use the word injury. The reason I say injury is because injuries heal. Damage doesn't seem like it's going to heal. And they think it's damage because they don't know how to heal it. I know how to heal it. I've seen it again and again and again. And I my own self, I've healed the ADHD in my life. I fell out of a 2-story tree as a kid and caused massive brain concussion, and I healed it. So I know how to heal it. And I know for some people, it's in 1 day, 2 days, taking extra support, you will have very dramatically less symptoms. Children who are like this are suddenly calm, more peaceful, more cooperative. So sometimes it takes longer, sometimes it takes more things. There's never any just one simple solution that works for everybody, but there's certain things that help everybody very, very quickly, as much as these drugs. Okay, so this is like, I wrote a whole book called Staying Focused in a Hyper World. I also put it in my book for Boy Crisis, the easy solutions that are proven. Now I've got some that don't have double-blind studies with them, but the ones that are proven to be equally effective to These drugs that damage your brain. Do parents hear this? No. Oh my God, it's so easy. And nobody knows about this stuff, the stuff I'm talking about. I mentioned a few things that natural studies have done. I'll do a few more that are documented ADHD remedies. Take away high stimulation and take omega-3, vitamin C, and grapeseed extract. Kabang! Those three things taken together in the right doses, no more than normal doses, is suddenly just as good as taking Ritalin, but no side effects. Just as good as watching video games, but no side effects. What is the side effect of watching video games? Is high dopamine stimulation, which causes the desensitizing of the dopamine receptor sites, which means that normal things are not as exciting, therefore they become boring and you have to go back to new. So you get in a relationship and it becomes familiar. That's no longer big dopamine newness, and you lose interest. So you move from one person to another to another. You can't sustain your focus on normal life activities, but you can have super focus on high dopamine stimulation. So the specifics on a variety of remedies for restoring normal brain function after you've had high dopamine stimulation. Basically, how to heal ADHD. One protocol. Grapeseed extract, you would take 300 milligrams twice a day. These are approximate always, so you don't have to get real anal about exact, okay? And grapeseed extract. Then vitamin C twice as much. Just those two things alone will give you better focus. For example, if I go to write, I'll take that. I want my brain to be super extra sharp. It would just sharpen your brain like that. They are super antioxidants to allow your brain to function better. So do those two things. Then the next is omega-3. You gotta have regular omega-3 in your body. There's a lot of different sources. 2 things of salmon a week would give you plenty of omega-3. There's my favorite is a product that comes from the brains of salmon. It's absorbed by your brain 50 times more. That brand is called Vectomega. It's just fantastic. So you take that regularly, 1 little capsule a day, these little capsules of grapeseed extract, vitamin C, kabang, you've got a solution there. You want a better solution, because that doesn't work for everybody,
yeah,
particularly
like,
if you're now
vegetarian or something like that for the salmon. What would you do for that?
Oh, now if you're a vegetarian, you're not going to go with salmon, of course. What you do is you make yourself chia pudding with stevia. You'll love it. Just go online, make the mixture of chia pudding. Chia seeds are rich in omega-3. And you soak them overnight and they turn into this nice pudding. It's delicious. I have it, put blueberries in it, there's a little stevia in it, and water in it, and it turns into a pudding. You can give this to your kids. My kids had it every day. Omega-3 brain food. It's just basic brain food. Also mothers after pregnancy, you're deficient in omega-3. You should be doing chia seeds every day, or lots of salmon, or omega-3 supplements. The ultimate is, once again, whenever you got brain problems, okay, and ADD is brain problems, you've got gut problems. They go hand in hand. Every kid with ADHD has got some gut problems going on, some constipation, some diarrhea from time to time, what's going to have stomach aches from time to time. And if a lot of people don't even know they're constipated, they don't realize that you're supposed to go maybe at least once a day, and it should be nice and easy. And if it's more than that, I do twice. I eat a meal and the last meal comes out. You know, just like that's good. That's the best. And so you need to have a good regularity. And if you don't, you're not going to get your optimal brain function. The vitamin C, the grapeseed extract, omega-3s, these are all shown in tests to be better than ADHD drugs when complemented with a diet that doesn't have high sugar. Okay, high sugar will always inhibit the healing process. So you got to cut back on sugar. Now, one of the ways to easily cut back on sugar is this thermos. I drink this all the time and I love sugar. I grew up on Coca-Cola, you know, 369. I love it, I love it, I love it. I don't need it because I have a nice green tea and I add to it a tablespoon of MCT oil and sip it throughout the day. MCT oil has ketones in it, and ketones feed the brain fuel, so you don't have to eat so much sugar to get your fuel. And I have no sugar cravings. So you got to find a way to get this MCT oil into your kids. And then they don't have the sugar cravings. They don't have the craziness. The next thing you need for ADD is minerals. Now this is so powerful. This is the thing. If you were to do one thing of all those things, my experience over 25 years of promoting these ideas, the most powerful, when I'm standing in line for 5 hours signing books, half the people will say, "You saved our relationship." Half the other people will say, you saved my children. You saved your supplements that you recommend have helped them so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I hear this again and again. So the most important thing is I call them super minerals because they're different from just normal minerals, but you can get them online. And they're minerals, alkalizing minerals, that are bonded to uric acid. Now, when we're babies, the mother's milk is filled with uric acid to bind with the minerals, to deliver the minerals into the brain of the baby. So you're getting your breast milk. If the minerals that you're getting from your mother are bonded to uric acid, because she has lots of uric acid, then it crosses the blood-brain barrier to build your brain. Now, if you take mineral supplements, they don't cross the blood-brain barrier. If your food is mineral-rich, then they do cross the blood-brain barrier. The most important mineral is lithium. Now, lithium is so powerful that if you have bipolar and you're schizophrenic and you give someone lithium, it will take away all those symptoms. But it will have side effects because they're using an inferior form of lithium. They're using lithium carbonate. Lithium carbonate doesn't cross the blood-brain barrier, just like all mineral supplements, doesn't cross the blood-brain barrier unless you just give the body 100 to 500 times the dose that you need. So when you give your body 500 times the dose of anything, you're going to have problems. 500 times the dose of magnesium, you'll die of diarrhea. 500 times the dose of calcium, you'll have a heart attack. 500 times the dose of potassium, all these things would be toxic. Well, 500 times the dose of lithium is toxic. So people are all afraid of lithium. All this research online, look up lithium, dangerous, side effect, bad, bad, bad. Well, yeah, what doctors give is bad, 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 but it does take away these symptoms. But Dr. Hans Nieper from Germany, he discovered take the right dose, a very tiny, 4.5 milligrams, that's all. 4.5 to 25 milligrams, one in that range. Bond it to uric acid, it becomes lithium orotate. Lithium orotate, you take it immediately, your brain works better. I'm talking kids who are like hyper and doing all this and whining and crying. They start doing this, they calm down, and doesn't dull you in any way. It doesn't take away creativity in any way. When you take lithium carbonate, it does dull you, it does calm you down, but it dulls you and it lowers your metabolism because it attacks your thyroid gland. It's a salt. Too much salt will attack your thyroid gland. Lithium orotate doesn't. And magnesium orotate, also necessary in the brain. Calcium orotate, also necessary in the brain. Potassium orotate, also necessary in the brain. And zinc orotate, also necessary in the brain. These are your five most powerful minerals for the brain to function. And I'll give you a little summary of how your brain works. You have to make dopamine and serotonin. You have to make choline. You have to make, to feel good. And you have to make GABA. That's all regulated by dopamine, by lithium. So think about, let's simplify this down to serotonin, calmus, dopamine accelerator. Both those things being produced. That's how they get produced is here's a neuron, and every time, and there's trillions of neurons, right? So you have to excite the neuron to produce dopamine, calcium has to go into the neuron. So it's going in, calcium stimulates, and dopamine gets produced. Then calcium has to come out. And if there's magnesium in the cell, then serotonin gets produced and you relax. So there's excitement, relaxation, excitement, relaxation, excitement, relaxation. This is going on trillions of times in, just in a minute. It's just every little neuron's doing this with calcium going in to produce dopamine for alertness, for focus, for interest, well-being, happiness. Okay, so it comes out, magnesium's in there. So this is happening all the time. To get calcium in, you need vitamin D. So if you're not getting enough sunshine, calcium doesn't get in there to stimulate the dopamine. We're putting all this sunscreen on our bodies. We need plenty of sunshine. Think about it. A long time ago, people never even had clothes, We're running around in the sun all the time. Their body was used to it. We don't have to do that now, but we need to have, the whiter your skin, the less time you need. But you've got to have a lot of vitamin D. Anybody with ADHD, with depression problems, mental problems, they need high dose vitamin D, at least 10,000 IUs of vitamin D. And that puts the calcium in. But what brings the calcium out so you can make the serotonin? Vitamin K2. Vitamin K2 would normally be in your salads, in your grasses. So people were getting lots of sunshine were also eating the grasses and the salads and so forth, and the greens. The greens have the K2. And also the butter from grass-fed cows. One of the best things you can eat is the butter of grass-fed cows. Well, that butter has vitamin K2. If they're not grass-fed, you don't get the K2. Just, you need, the cows have to eat the grass, and that makes the K2. The people eat the dairy. So they get their K2. Now K2 is the vitamin that pulls calcium out. All arterial sclerosis is a deficiency of K2, and it's from too much vitamin D or just too much calcium in your body. It's you're not pulling it out. It's got to go in and out, in and out, in and out. So you need magnesium to be there. You need calcium to stimulate. You need magnesium to calm. You need vitamin D to go in. You need vitamin K2 to come out. So this is happening all the time. You need zinc. Okay, every cell has to have zinc. They all have a zinc receptor site, and zinc protects the cell, activates the cell as part of the... What zinc does is when the dopamine and serotonin are produced, it controls the transport of these neurotransmitters. So in order to transmit, say they have to move along like this through your brain, you need zinc for that to happen. And when you don't have enough zinc, then the receptor sites for zinc grab mercury. So this is the whole thing, why males are more vulnerable to autism, 5 times more males with autism, 3 times more with ADD, at least double with learning difficulties. What that's about is we have so much mercury toxicity today that for a boy, his body's making testosterone. And when his body makes testosterone, he runs out of zinc. So boys are more vulnerable to zinc deficiency. And when you don't have zinc in those receptor sites absorb mercury and kill the neuron. So you can see films of mercury getting into neurons, and they just, over 24 hours, the connective tissue disappears and then the neurons die. That's what mercury does. Now, mercury doesn't affect everybody the same. It depends upon how much zinc you've got in your brain. And if you're a boy, you're more vulnerable because you're going to have lower zinc because you're making testosterone. If you're not getting enough zinc in the food you're eating and so forth, which we don't get enough.
I hope you've enjoyed this episode and learnt some information that can dramatically help you in the years to come, and also help people that you love and care about. That's what this is about, learning and growing together and creating a better world for our future. I mean, I'm about to bring a baby son into the world. My wife is here right next to the camera, and I'm looking at my pregnant wife, and she's looking back at me here, but you can't see that because she's off camera right now. But we are in a situation where we want to see a better world for our son, right? And the only way we can do that is by getting this message to others and sharing and being a part of a movement. Please, if you have been inspired, just know that it doesn't end with you. Other people need to know. I know it's challenging sometimes. I know not everyone sees things the way you and I do. I know not everyone wants to know these things, but there are so many people that do. So many people that are so hungry for change, hungry for help, hungry for answers. And that's the time when we finally get humble, when something goes wrong. And these things, sadly, this is how often human beings learn, through challenges. So you being knowledgeable, being equipped, being able to help and give the information, not just be able to say, I heard about, check this out. You're actually knowledgeable, you've trained yourself, you've got answers, you can actually have a good conversation with someone, share with them facts, you can actually save lives. You realize it's not just about this or that doctor or me or somebody else or another filmmaker. This is about all of us banding together in a huge team across the world to make a difference, to make changes. We're so excited about what can happen and what can transform in your life when you take this position, when you look to how you can help others and be a part of a change that's going to revolutionize this world. So just remember, we're now at the close of the series. Take action today because we're closing everything up. And when you take action today, that you'll get our amazing bonuses, and we have 50, half off, 50% off, and even 67% off on our platinum package. But we have so many bonuses that will not be included, or you won't be able to get if you come back at another time. And so we just want to reward you for taking action, and we want to encourage you to take action on your health, and that's why we've made this in the way that we have. And we want to give you the opportunity to support our mission because we need help. If you've enjoyed this, if you've got a blessing and a benefit and you felt really encouraged by us, then I encourage you to support us, because when you do that, you're able to give back to us, and you're also able to say thank you and show your gratitude, and that's a beautiful and positive thing. It's like giving a tip at a restaurant and showing that person that you appreciate what you've done, but that also sends a signal to you that this is important to me. I'm willing to put time, energy, money into my health, and that's an important message to send to you, yourself, and to others, that this is one of the most important areas that you can use to change your health. Remember, when you take action, you'll be a part of our group, you'll be a part of these weekly question and answers, you'll also be a part of how we give discounts on supplements and different things that we learn and discover, and we negotiate and find out ways to get these at the cheapest way possible, and we can share with you all these different amazing pieces of information to save you literally hundreds, and in some cases more. We look for ways that we can support you and make a difference in your life. Take action today. Click the links below to get started while you have the opportunity on this really special opportunity to come with us on an amazing journey and to use these great packages, the silver, gold, or the platinum package. Just choose which one works for you and take action today so you can come with us. Click below, and I look forward to seeing you on the other side.